Welcome, comrades, to 1984 Law, and today I take a crack at answering a critical question in terms of understanding the law of the book. Can we really trust Goldstein's book? For those newer to the world, Goldstein's book is the in-universe text given to Winston Smith in Part 2, Chapter 9, or rather dropped off by an anonymous person, presumably at the direction of O'Brien himself. Winston and we read 2 chapters of the book, named The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism, which explains many things, including the meaning behind the slogan "War is Peace" and how the party maintains the hierarchical structure of the society. O'Brien later explains in Part 3 too that the unread parts of the book include how the party could be overthrown by a proletarian rebellion. For people reading the novel for the first time and bookmarking any time before Part 3, Chapter 3, it's undoubtedly a goldmine of information about the world. However, by the time of Winston's interrogation, we are then hit with this exchange. Quote, "You have read the book, Goldstein's book, or parts of it at least. Did it tell you anything you did not know already?" "You have read it?" said Winston. "I wrote it. That is to say, I collaborated in writing it. No book is produced individually, as you know." Is it true, what it says? As description, yes. The program it sets forth is nonsense. The secret accumulation of knowledge, a gradual spread of enlightenment, ultimately a proletarian rebellion, the overthrow of the party. So a gut punch for both Winston and us. Goldstein's book is a fabrication, a text written by the totally loyal O'Brien and his colleagues. Well, not so fast. While it is party produced, at least that's what O'Brien says, it doesn't necessarily follow that it's useless as a source of information. Indeed, O'Brien himself confirms it is mostly true as description. I've read many comments over the history of the channel dismissing this, falling into an epistemological nihilism in regard to the novel. Nothing O'Brien, and by extension the book, tells us can be considered true, given his fanatical loyalty to the party and to Big Brother. Well, I in turn question this. Firstly, why exactly would O'Brien lie about this? What specific reason would he have? Some might say to demoralise Winston, but given what the character has already gone through at that point, I'd say he was already thoroughly demoralised. We could argue it was to undermine Winston's own trust in any source of knowledge other than the party. This does have some substance to it, as we know the chapters after this focus on O'Brien's endeavours to convince Winston that he is insane and wrong to reject the party's collective truth. By making Winston question himself and also Goldstein's book, O'Brien eventually does mould Winston into a good-thinking shell of his former self. But what makes little sense with all of this is why then admit the book is mostly true as description? Could it be that it simply is true as description? Sometimes I've found things really are just what they seem, and I think this is the case with this statement. Indeed, O'Brien himself helps us here. While he fervently rejects any notion that the proles could overthrow the party, he does proceed on the premise that the book had adequately explained the how of the world and not the why. O'Brien himself eventually fills this why gap for us later on, but the point is, he acts as if the book is descriptively true going forward. Interestingly too, the pre-Minilove Winston, still in total mental rebellion, concurs with what the book says before he learns it's a creation of the Thought Police, thinking that the book did not so much enlighten him on the how of the world, but rather systematise the information, making it clearer, and even suggesting this was a characteristic of the best of books. What Winston already thought was true then was simply confirmed by the book, supporting O'Brien's later claim. A cool thing with this part of the book too is the subtle nod to sincerity in the language and foreshadowing used. The exact wording is this, quote, "It was the product of a mind similar to his own, but enormously more powerful, more systematic, less fear-ridden. The best books, he perceived, are those that tell you what you know already." Hopefully this sparks the recollection of O'Brien's later words and admission in Part 3. Quote, "Do you remember writing in your diary," he said, "that it did not matter whether I was a friend or an enemy, since I was at least a person who understood you and could be talked to. You were right, I enjoy talking to you. Your mind appeals to me. It resembles my own, except you happen to be insane. Note the clear connection, O'Brien mirroring Winston's earlier belief that they have similar minds. Winston's observation was a thought too, and not something committed to writing in his diary, which only enhances this connection. The point is that O'Brien is sincere here. There's no real reason to lie about this, or his assertion of the descriptive truth of the book. I suppose this isn't ironclad support, but rather a decent indication of a general sincerity on O'Brien's part, as he confirms what Winston already suspects is true, at least in previous observations about O'Brien and the book's author. This does helpfully bring us to a related plank of support, which is Winston's general perception of O'Brien in Part 3. Quote, his voice had grown almost dreamy. The exaltation, the lunatic enthusiasm was still in his face. He is not pretending, thought Winston. He is not a hypocrite. He believes every word he says. While not a direct reference to the book or the specific comment on it as true as description, I think this is still important. While O'Brien's actions are certainly deceptive in luring Winston in as he did, this does not necessarily mean he is totally deceptive or somehow a compulsive liar. All indications here are that O'Brien is genuine, fervent in what he says. Indeed, it was precisely this sincerity in his tormentor that Winston found horrific. If O'Brien had clearly betrayed hypocrisy and insincerity, then in a way it would have filled Winston with some hope. I say hope as it reminds me of the dialogue between Winston and Julia in their first meeting. Winston wanted Julia to have slept with members of the inner party, as it would show they too were corrupt, and hence that the system itself was therefore vulnerable. In a similar way, if O'Brien had indicated hypocrisy, this would hint at inner party vulnerability, and perhaps an ultimate path to its collapse, and that of party power. A final meta point I'll highlight too is that it makes sense for the book to be trustworthy in respect to world building, as without it, the lore would be scarce indeed. I think something like Goldstein's book or some other form of exposition is required if the latter parts of the book are to work for the reader. Indeed, Winston requires it to fulfill his arc of achieving the ultimate victory over himself. It's partly by understanding both how and why the party does what it does that he reaches his final good-thinking mental state and his ultimate love of Big Brother. So hopefully we can see at least that the issue of the validity of Goldstein's book is not as clear-cut as may at first seem. Even if Goldstein and the Brotherhood are fictitious, which, by the way, O'Brien never confirms either way, and even if it is his partial creation, this doesn't mean the information within is not true, at least by O'Brien's own admission excluding the parts on the proletarian rebellion. Do you agree, or should the book be consigned to the memory hole? Let us all know in the comments section below, and remember, the rule of the party is forever. Make that the starting point of your thoughts, forever.